What is justice? Is it fairness? Is it giving everyone what they deserve? Or is it simply obeying the laws of the powerful? This question has haunted humanity for thousands of years, and it remains as urgent today as it was in ancient Athens. When societies break down, when corruption spreads, when people feel betrayed by their leaders or neighbors, the cry for justice is always the loudest. But what exactly are we asking for when we demand justice? Over 2,000 years ago, Plato dared to ask this question in his masterpiece, The Republic. He did not give us a short, easy answer. Instead, he built a dialogue that forces us to reflect on our own assumptions about morality, power, and the human soul. To understand justice, Plato believed, is to understand not only how society should be ordered but how we, as individuals, should live. And here's the powerful truth: when Plato explored justice, he was not talking about dusty laws or courtroom battles. He was talking about the very structure of human life, what it means to live well, to act rightly, and to contribute to a society that is more than a collection of selfish desires. For Plato, justice was not just a word. It was the foundation of a life worth living. But let's strip away the academic weight and make this simple, practical, and unforgettable. Imagine you live in a city where the powerful rule without accountability, where the rich can buy their way out of punishment, and where the poor are crushed by unfair systems. Would you call this city just? Most of us would instinctively say no. And yet, throughout history, such cities have existed again and again. Plato saw this in his own Athens, a democracy plagued by corruption and ultimately doomed by injustice. So he posed a challenge: can we define justice in such a way that it cannot be reduced to mere power or convenience? Can we find a vision of justice that elevates both the individual and the community? In the Republic, Plato stages a dramatic conversation between Socrates and several citizens of Athens. One of them, Thrasymachus, makes a bold and cynical claim: justice, he says, is nothing more than the advantage of the stronger. In other words, justice is whatever benefits those in power. To many, this sounds disturbingly accurate. After all, don't we often see laws written and twisted to serve the elites? Don't we see people in positions of influence declaring what is right and wrong simply to protect their own interests? Yet Socrates refuses to accept this bleak vision. He insists that true justice must run deeper. It cannot be reduced to raw power or personal advantage. Instead, he argues, justice is harmony, both within the individual soul and within society. Just as a healthy body has its parts working together for the good of the whole, a just person lives with reason, spirit, and desire in balance. And just as a healthy city ensures that every class plays its proper role, rulers leading with wisdom, warriors defending with courage, and workers sustaining life with discipline, a just society functions when each part contributes without overstepping its bounds. This vision is striking because it suggests that justice is not simply about punishment or reward. It is about alignment, balance, and order. For Plato, injustice was not merely breaking the rules. It was inner chaos, reason overrun by greed, or societies torn apart by ambition and envy. Justice, then, is not something imposed from outside. It begins within each of us. This idea might sound lofty, but think about it in practical terms. Imagine a person who constantly betrays their promises, who cheats others, who acts selfishly without regard for the consequences. Can such a person truly be at peace with themselves? Plato would say no. Injustice corrupts the soul. It leads to a life of constant conflict, suspicion, and dissatisfaction. Justice, by contrast, brings order to the mind. It allows us to live harmoniously with others because we are first at peace within ourselves. So when Plato asks, what is justice, he is really asking, what does it mean to live in a way that makes life not only possible, but good? And perhaps even more importantly, can an unjust life, no matter how powerful or wealthy, ever truly be happy? These questions will carry us through this exploration. And as we follow Plato's reasoning, we will discover that justice is not just an abstract concept. It is a path to freedom, a guide to happiness, and a standard by which both societies and individuals can measure their worth. If Plato had simply told us, justice is harmony, most of us would have nodded politely and then forgotten it. Harmony sounds pleasant, but it is vague. What makes real harmony possible in a messy, complex world? Why should we believe it is better to live justly when injustice often appears to reward those bold enough to seize it? These are not abstract questions, they go to the heart of how we live and what kind of world we create together. Plato, through Socrates, tackles this head-on by examining justice from two levels, the level of the individual soul and the level of the entire city. His method is powerful because it reminds us that human beings do not live in isolation. The character of a society reflects the character of its citizens, and the character of each citizen is shaped by the society around them. If we want to understand justice in ourselves, we must look at justice in the community. So let's picture the city Socrates describes, the famous city in speech. He imagines a simple community formed when individuals come together because none of us can meet all our needs alone. One person farms, another builds, another weaves cloth, another provides protection. Each contributes their own work, and together they create something greater than any one individual could achieve. This cooperation, Plato argues, is the foundation of justice. Justice begins when each person does the work they are most suited for, without trying to dominate or steal the role of another. Now think about that for a moment. In our own time, doesn't much of the injustice we see come from people refusing to stay within their proper role? Leaders who put personal ambition above the common good. Workers who cheat or exploit. Citizens who demand privileges without responsibility. The harmony of a community collapses when everyone tries to grab more than what rightly belongs to them. Justice, then, is about fulfilling one's function with integrity, and trusting that the whole will flourish when each part performs its task. But Plato does not stop at this basic insight. He divides the city into three classes: the rulers, whose job is to govern with wisdom; the auxiliaries, or warriors, whose task is to protect the city and enforce order; and the producers, who provide food, goods, and services. Each of these groups has its own virtues. The rulers must embody wisdom, the auxiliaries must show courage, and the producers must exercise moderation and discipline. When all three perform their roles correctly, the result is not tyranny or chaos, but balance, justice at the level of society. And here is the remarkable part: Plato mirrors this exact structure within the human soul. Just as the city has three classes, the individual has three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason is the rational mind that seeks truth and long-term good. Spirit is our drive, our sense of honor, our capacity for righteous anger and courage. Appetite is our desire for pleasure, comfort, and material gain. If reason rules, guided by wisdom, with spirit supporting it and appetite disciplined, the soul is in harmony. This inner balance is what Plato calls justice within the individual. But if appetite overpowers reason, or spirit rebels against wisdom, chaos erupts inside us. That chaos is injustice, and it leads to suffering, no matter how wealthy or outwardly successful one might be. Think about your own life. Have you ever made a decision driven purely by appetite, by greed, lust, or craving, and then felt the emptiness afterward? or acted out of anger, letting spirit take over, only to regret your words or actions. We all know that feeling of being out of balance. Plato's point is not to condemn us but to show that true peace comes when each part of our nature fulfills its proper role. Reason must lead, spirit must protect, and appetite must serve. This is why justice is more than obeying the law. It is about the very architecture of the soul. To live justly is to live in such a way that our inner life is not a battlefield but a well-ordered community. And the same is true of society. When rulers rule wisely, warriors defend courageously, and workers live with moderation, the city reflects the just soul, balanced, ordered, at peace. But Plato is not naive. He knows that injustice often wears the mask of success. He introduces characters who argue that injustice is not only natural but profitable. One of the most famous examples is the myth of Gyges' ring, presented by Glaucon. Imagine, he says, a man finds a magical ring that makes him invisible. With this power, he can do whatever he wants without fear of punishment. He can steal, kill, lie, and indulge every desire, and no one will ever know. Would anyone, Glaucon asks, still live justly if they could get away with injustice? It's a haunting question. Because deep down, we know how tempting such power would be. If no one could see our actions, if there were no consequences, would we stay true to justice? Or would we give in to greed and desire? Glaucon suggests that most people are only just because they fear punishment. Strip away the fear, and injustice will win. Socrates responds with a profound counterargument. Injustice, he says, is not merely an external act. It is a disease of the soul. Even if no one sees you, even if you escape punishment, living unjustly destroys you from within. The unjust man is never truly free, because he is enslaved by his appetites. He may appear powerful, but he is at war with himself. His soul is disordered, sick, and restless. Justice, by contrast, brings inner freedom. The just person, even without wealth or power, enjoys harmony in their own soul. They are not torn apart by conflict between reason, spirit, and appetite. They live in integrity, and this inner integrity is worth more than any external advantage injustice might bring. Let's pause here, because this is the heart of Plato's vision. Justice is not a set of rules imposed from outside. It is the state of inner balance and societal balance that makes true happiness possible. The unjust person may fool others, but they cannot fool themselves. The cost of injustice is paid in the currency of the soul. Now imagine applying this lesson to our own world. How often do we see leaders who seem untouchable, who abuse power as though they wore Gyges' ring of invisibility? They may escape legal punishment, but do they live in peace? Or are they haunted by paranoia, mistrust, and the constant need to defend their stolen advantage? And on the other hand, think of the quiet integrity of someone who lives simply but honestly, who treats others fairly, who does the right thing even when no one is watching. Such a person radiates strength. They may not have wealth or fame, but they carry an invisible harmony that cannot be bought. This is the justice Plato calls us to, not just in society, but in ourselves. And here is where his vision challenges us most directly. To live justly is not always easy. It requires self-mastery. It demands that reason take the throne within us, not as a tyrant, but as a wise ruler. It calls us to discipline our desires, to channel our passions, and to live not only for ourselves but for the harmony of the whole. This is why Plato saw justice as the highest virtue. It is not a luxury. It is the very foundation of the good life. So when we ask, what is justice, we are really asking, what does it mean to live in balance? What does it mean to be whole? Plato's answer is as relevant today as it was in ancient Athens. Justice is not simply following rules or avoiding punishment. It is the condition of being in order, as an individual, and as a society. And yet, Plato's argument does not end here. He pushes us further, asking whether justice is truly more desirable than injustice even when all external appearances are stripped away. Can we prove that the just life is better than the unjust life, even if the unjust man looks like a success and the just man suffers? That is the challenge we must face next. Because only by confronting this paradox can we understand why Plato insists that justice is not only moral but essential for happiness itself. Plato does not allow us to remain comfortable. It would be easy to agree that justice is balance, harmony, and inner peace. But what happens when life itself seems to reward injustice? When those who lie, steal, or manipulate rise to positions of wealth and power? This is the tension at the heart of the Republic. And it is the tension each of us feels when we look out at the world and ask, if justice is so good, why does it so often lose? Socrates takes this challenge seriously. He knows that simply praising justice will not convince anyone. To truly defend justice, he must show that even when injustice seems to win on the surface, it is ultimately self-defeating. The question, then, is not just whether justice is noble, but whether it is the most desirable way to live. Plato paints the picture by comparing two lives, the life of the perfectly just man, and the life of the perfectly unjust man. The just man, he says, might suffer ridicule, poverty, and even torture. He may be seen by the world as weak or foolish because he refuses to cheat, betray, or seize power. Meanwhile, the unjust man may appear to live in glory. He may accumulate wealth, command respect, and seem untouchable. To many observers, the unjust life looks more rewarding. But Plato invites us to look beneath the surface. The unjust man's power depends on lies, betrayal, and fear. He can never rest, because his soul is divided against itself. He is forced to guard his position, manipulate allies, and silence critics. Outwardly, he may look like a king. Inwardly, he is a slave to appetite and ambition. His soul, instead of being whole, is fragmented. The just man, by contrast, may suffer externally, but his soul remains intact. He is free from inner conflict. His reason rules, his spirit supports, his desires are tempered. Even if the world misunderstands him, he has something the unjust man can never buy, inner harmony. This, Plato insists, is the true reward of justice. Think of it this way, imagine two houses. One looks magnificent on the outside, marble walls, golden doors, lavish decorations. But inside, the structure is crumbling. The foundation is cracked, the beams are rotten, and the house is on the verge of collapse. Now imagine another house, simple and modest, but built on strong foundations. The walls are steady, the roof is secure, and the home endures storms without falling. Which is truly better? Plato says the soul of the just man is like the second house. It may not dazzle, but it stands firm. The unjust soul, no matter how glamorous, is destined to collapse. This is where Plato makes one of his most radical claims: justice is not only morally superior, it is also psychologically superior. It is good for the soul in the same way that health is good for the body. Injustice, no matter how cleverly hidden, is like a disease. It eats away at the soul until it destroys both the individual and the society. But Plato does not stop there. He explores what happens when injustice is not just in a single soul, but spreads through an entire community. A just society, as we saw, is one in which rulers, warriors, and workers each perform their proper roles in harmony. But what happens when this harmony breaks down? Plato describes a cycle of political decay, in which societies fall into corruption when appetites or ambitions overpower wisdom. The first stage is timocracy, a society ruled by honor and military ambition. At first, this may seem noble, but soon it degenerates into oligarchy, where wealth becomes the highest good. From oligarchy, corruption grows into democracy, not in the sense of equal justice, but in the sense of unchecked freedom where every desire is given equal weight. And from the chaos of democracy, tyranny arises, the rule of a single man enslaved by his own appetites, dragging the entire society into his inner chaos. It is a chilling picture, because it reminds us that societies mirror the souls of their citizens. When individuals live unjustly, the community itself becomes unjust. When reason is silenced by greed or ambition, both the person and the state fall into ruin. Justice, then, is not only personal, it is political. It is the glue that holds a society together. Let's pause and connect this to our world. Look around, do we not see echoes of Plato's cycle in our own times? Nations rising with noble ideals, only to descend into corruption, inequality, and chaos. Leaders driven by power rather than wisdom. Citizens demanding freedom without responsibility, creating instability that paves the way for tyranny. Plato's Republic, though ancient, reads like a mirror of our present age. And here lies the power of his philosophy. Justice is not simply a courtroom concept, nor is it only a personal virtue. It is a universal principle of order, balance, and harmony that must be cultivated in every level of existence. Without justice, the soul decays. Without justice, society collapses. But let's bring this back to the personal. Because Plato's true genius is in showing that the fate of society begins with the fate of the individual. If you want a just city, you must become a just person. If you want rulers of integrity, you must first cultivate integrity in yourself. Justice is not something we can outsource to politicians or judges. It begins in the quiet discipline of our own choices. Think of the small injustices we sometimes permit in ourselves, the little lies, the broken promises, the moments we let greed or anger guide us. Each of these is like a crack in the foundation of the soul. They may seem small, but left unchecked, they spread. Over time, they create disorder, both within and around us. Plato's call is to repair those cracks, to bring our own inner life into harmony, so that we can contribute to harmony in the world. And yet, Plato also warns us that justice is demanding. It requires training, discipline, and education. Just as athletes must train their bodies, so must we train our souls. For him, philosophy itself is that training. To ask questions, to seek truth, to challenge assumptions, this is the way we strengthen reason so that it can guide spirit and appetite. Philosophy, then, is not a luxury. It is a necessity for justice. This is why Socrates compares the soul to a city. If the rulers are weak, the city falls. If reason is weak, the soul collapses. If warriors betray the city, chaos reigns. If spirit betrays reason, anger and pride dominate. If workers grow greedy, the city becomes corrupt. If appetites rule the soul, addiction and restlessness take over. Justice demands vigilance. It demands that reason, both in ourselves and in our leaders, remain strong and wise. So, what is justice? By now, Plato has shown us that it is not power, it is not wealth, it is not fear of punishment. Justice is the harmony of the soul and the harmony of the city. It is the state in which each part performs its proper role, guided by wisdom. It is the condition in which true happiness becomes possible. And yet, one final question remains: if justice is so noble, why do so few people pursue it? Why do so many choose the path of injustice, even knowing the inner turmoil it creates? This is the mystery we must confront next. Because Plato does not only want us to understand justice. He wants us to love it, to choose it even when injustice tempts us with glittering rewards. And to do that, he must show us why the just life is not only good, but the best possible life we can live. Plato has walked us on a long journey. We have seen justice compared with injustice. We have looked into the soul and into society. We have witnessed the dangers of corruption, tyranny, and decay. And yet, we are left with a final, pressing question: why should we care? Why should we, living thousands of years after Plato, in a world of technology, globalization, and constant change, give our attention to an ancient debate about justice? The answer lies in something deeper than politics, deeper than laws, deeper even than morality. The question of justice is really the question of what kind of life is worth living. And that question has no expiration date. Plato's argument, at its heart, is not about abstract systems of government. It is about you and me. It is about the daily struggle between order and chaos, between harmony and division, between living as a whole person or living as a fragmented one. Justice matters because it speaks directly to the condition of the human soul. Think for a moment about your own life. Have you ever felt torn in two directions, reason pulling you one way, desire pulling you another, pride or anger urging you toward a third? That conflict, that inner war, is the seed of injustice. It is the soul divided against itself. And you can feel it, not as a theory, but as a lived reality: sleepless nights, regret after choices made in haste, shame after betraying your own values. This is the lived experience of injustice. Justice, in contrast, is not an abstract idea. It is the peace you feel when your choices align with your values. It is the calm of knowing you did the right thing, even when it was costly. It is the strength of living with integrity, where reason and spirit and desire work together rather than against one another. You feel it in your chest, in your breath, in your silence. Justice is harmony made visible in your life. But Plato is not naive. He knows that the world often rewards injustice. He knows that liars rise, cheaters profit, and tyrants sometimes thrive. And yet, he insists that these victories are hollow. They are the triumphs of a soul already diseased. Imagine a man who feasts every day but is secretly poisoned. Outwardly, he looks well-fed. Inwardly, he is dying. Injustice is that poison. It corrodes from within. And no amount of outward success can cure it. Plato's great claim, the one that shakes us still today, is that justice is not only right, it is also wise. It is the truest form of self-interest. For to be just is to be whole. And to be whole is to be free. This is why Socrates, in the Republic, refuses to be swayed by arguments that injustice is more profitable. He sees beyond the surface rewards to the deeper reality: injustice enslaves the soul. Justice, though it may bring hardship in the world, liberates the self. And what is freedom worth, if not everything? Let's take this further. If justice is harmony, then injustice is dissonance. Think of music. A symphony requires each instrument to play its part in tune, under the guidance of a conductor. The beauty of the whole depends on the order of the parts. But imagine one instrument playing out of key, louder than the rest, following its own whim. The harmony collapses. Noise replaces music. Injustice is that noise. Justice is the symphony. This metaphor reveals something profound. Justice is not about domination, but about cooperation. It is not about suppressing desires or crushing ambition, but about arranging them rightly. Just as music does not silence instruments but harmonizes them, justice does not silence parts of the soul or classes in society. It brings them into balance. Each part has a role. Each part matters. And yet, Plato also knows that harmony does not come easily. It must be cultivated. Just as musicians train for years to master their craft, so too must we train our souls to master reason, spirit, and appetite. Justice is not given. It is built. It is the slow work of philosophy, discipline, and self-reflection. This is why the Republic is not just a political treatise but a spiritual manual. Plato is not simply telling us how to design a city, he is telling us how to design a life. He is giving us a blueprint for inner order in a world of chaos. Now, you may wonder, if justice is so noble, why do so many people reject it? Why do we, even knowing the peace it offers, often choose the path of selfishness, greed, or deception? Plato's answer is as unsettling as it is true: most people do not see clearly. Their souls are clouded by ignorance, their desires distorted by the pursuit of pleasure and power. They are like prisoners in a cave, mistaking shadows for reality. Only philosophy, only the search for truth, can lead them out. And here we arrive at one of the most famous passages in all of Plato, the allegory of the cave. Imagine human beings chained in a dark cave, forced to watch shadows on the wall, believing those shadows to be reality. They do not know the sun exists. They do not know there is a world beyond. Now imagine one prisoner breaking free, stepping into the light, and seeing the truth for the first time. This, Plato says, is the journey of philosophy, the painful but liberating ascent from ignorance to wisdom. Justice requires this ascent. For if you remain in the cave, you cannot live justly. You are ruled by illusions, by false desires, by empty appearances. Only by seeking truth, by turning the soul toward the light, can you order your life rightly. And this is why Plato insists that philosophers must be kings, not because they seek power, but because they see clearly. Only those who know the good can rule justly. Now, whether we agree with Plato's idea of philosopher-kings or not, the lesson is timeless. Without wisdom, power becomes tyranny. Without truth, freedom becomes chaos. Without justice, life becomes noise. So where does this leave us today? We are not building Plato's Republic, nor are we likely to live under philosopher-kings. But we face the same choice Plato posed over 2,000 years ago: will we live justly or unjustly? Will we cultivate harmony or allow chaos to reign? Justice, in Plato's sense, is not outdated. It is as urgent now as it was then. In a world of division, anger, and greed, the call for harmony is louder than ever. In a time when individuals are torn by stress, anxiety, and inner conflict, the need for wholeness is undeniable. And in an age where societies fracture under inequality and corruption, the wisdom of Plato still shines. Justice is the foundation of true flourishing. If you want to change the world, begin with yourself. Train your reason to guide your life. Let your spirit support what is noble. Keep your desires in balance, neither suppressing them nor letting them rule you. This is the work of justice. This is the path to harmony. And when enough individuals walk this path, societies begin to change. Leaders of integrity emerge. Communities find stability. The noise begins to resolve into music. Justice, in this way, is contagious. It spreads from soul to soul, from person to person, until it shapes the very fabric of the world. This, ultimately, is Plato's vision. Justice is not a distant ideal, but a living reality we can create, within ourselves, within our relationships, and within our societies. It is not the possession of a few, but the responsibility of all. And it is not merely about survival, but about flourishing, the kind of flourishing that comes from being whole, balanced, and at peace. So, the next time you wonder what justice truly means, remember this: it is not merely the absence of crime, nor the punishment of wrongdoing. Justice is the presence of harmony. It is the music of the soul in tune with truth. It is the city aligned with wisdom. It is the life lived with integrity, even in the face of hardship. Plato's voice, echoing across the centuries, invites us to choose this life. To step out of the cave. To seek truth. To live with harmony. To pursue justice, not as an abstract idea, but as the deepest expression of who we are meant to be. And so, we are left with a challenge, not to debate justice endlessly, but to embody it. To live in such a way that our very being becomes an argument for justice. That, Plato would say, is the truest philosophy. Thank you for watching this video. If you found value here, like, share, and comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear how you see Plato's vision of justice in today's world. Don't forget to subscribe if it's your first time here. And if you'd like to support this channel, check the pinned comment, there's a special link waiting for you. And finally, before you go, don't miss the video showing right here on your screen. It dives even deeper into the timeless wisdom that can guide your path. Click it now, and let's keep walking the path together.